In the first moments after waking, before thought gathers like fog, there is a singular decision that determines the shape of your day. This decision is quiet, almost invisible, and it carries more consequence than any plan written later. Imagine standing where an ancient path meets a modern street, a place where a samurai might once have paused to watch the sun rise, and a contemporary man reaches for his phone. One choice leads to distraction, the other to mastery. This is not a promise of sudden transformation, but a description of cause and effect. The morning becomes the root of attention, and attention is the blade with which life is cut. Miyamoto Musashi observed that strategy begins with the smallest gestures, the way one arranges one's sword and sits in silence. The same principle applies to the way we begin our hours. Listen now to a simple practice drawn from Zen stillness and samurai exactness, a practice that, when kept, rearranges the mind toward clarity and unshakable focus. The story that follows is not a blueprint for overnight success, but a map of how slow, consistent action sculpts a discipline that lasts all day. Chapter 1. The Insight. Kenji woke before dawn because he could not otherwise bear the chaos of the day. He had been pulled in so many directions that his work felt like a string of unfinished tasks, and his presence at home was thin as smoke. He was not remarkable at first. He was someone with a steady mind worn thin by notifications, meetings, and the endless demand to perform. One morning, following an old friend's advice, Kenji abandoned the habit of reaching outward immediately and tried instead to meet the morning inwardly, to spend 30 minutes in a precise, quiet routine. He began by sitting upright on a low cushion, feet grounded, breath measured, and he allowed sensations to surface without pursuing them, like leaves floating on a pond. Within weeks, he noticed small shifts. Decisions that had once been laden with hesitation grew clear. The urge to respond instantly to every disturbance faded, and a calm center formed under the noise. This is the awakening that turns busy endurance into a chosen path rather than a knee-jerk reaction to circumstance. Chapter 2. The Quiet Practice. The practice Kenji adopted was simple and strict. 40 breaths, 1 bowl of warm tea drunk without distraction, 10 minutes of walking in silence, and a single, prioritized task set before he touched any device. Each element was non-negotiable and performed with full attention. There was no ritual complexity, only precision, because samurai training favored what was essential and discarded what was ornamental. Unnecessary motion was called mudan, and Kenji learned to cut it away. The tea was not soothing in a sentimental way, but served as a test of presence, demanding that he taste each sip and return to the body when the mind wandered. The silent walk taught him to hold attention in movement, to notice how intention informs every step without letting thought run the path. Finally, setting one task before the world intruded, created a container for the morning's power, an uncluttered field in which deep work could take root. The quietness was not emptiness. It was a sharpened instrument, a readiness to act with full clarity. Chapter 3. The Discipline of Elimination. Discipline, in the samurai sense, is less about accumulation and more about subtraction. Musashi wrote that his way was to remove superfluity until only what mattered remained, like empty space shaping the blade. Kenji learned to apply this by eliminating the first things that stole his control. He removed his phone from the bedside, closed accounts that offered constant interruption, and refused meetings in the early hours. These are small, non-negotiables that create leverage. Each refusal is an act of identity, a declaration that he is ruled by principles rather than impulses. Over time, these eliminations became habits that maintained the morning's focus without requiring willpower each day, because systems, once built, do the work for you. Removing options does not impoverish life. It clarifies it, producing room for depth and a steadier mind. The discipline of elimination protects the morning practice, and through it, Kenji protected the rest of his day from being scattered. Chapter 4. The Inner Battle. The quiet practice revealed an internal battlefield where habit and intention met. And as with any true struggle, it was not about defeating desire, but about changing relationship with it. In the early weeks, Kenji faced irritation, sleepiness, and the seductive voice that promised productivity, if only he checked messages first. These were not obstacles to be resented, but information to be observed and transformed. He practiced returning to breath, acknowledging urges without acting on them. And slowly, the voice of reaction lost its urgency. It remained present, but no longer commanded the center. This surrender was not defeat, but a disciplined yielding that allowed higher choice to emerge, similar to a warrior lowering the sword to lift it more deliberately when the moment truly demanded. The transformation was subtle. Less drama, fewer crises, and a steadier capacity to focus on what mattered. In that space, strength was not loud but exact, not forceful but clear. Chapter 5. Musashi's lesson applied. Miyamoto. Musashi taught that the way of strategy is to make oneself like an open field, adaptable yet rooted, and that mastery is cultivated through repetition and an unflinching look at one's own weaknesses. Kenji used Musashi's counsel to analyze failure without self-loathing, to notice where his attention slipped, and to design small corrections rather than grand promises. He treated his morning practice as training ground, not as performance. Every missed breath or distracted sip was a lesson, an opportunity to refine posture, timing, and resolve. Importantly, Musashi emphasized the unity of disciplines. The sword cannot be perfected in isolation from the body, breath, and mind, and Kenji extended that unity to his life. The morning practice connected to how he ate, moved, and spoke, creating coherence rather than compartmentalized effort. This integration produced a quieter confidence. Tasks were met with an economy of motion and thought. Decisions fell into place with less friction, and presence became habitual. Applying Musashi was not imitation but assimilation of principle into daily action. Chapter 6. Focus as a habit, not a state. The crucial realization for Kenji was that focus is not a fleeting state to chase, but a habit to build. It is less about dramatic concentration and more about consistent alignment with small rules. By repeating the morning practice, he engineered conditions that made focused work the default rather than the exception, so that when complexity arrived, he had a scaffold to support attention. He stopped oscillating between frantic busyness and forced silence. Instead, his day was organized into deliberate segments shaped by the morning's momentum. Each one entered with the same measured breath and single-task intent. When disruption came, he returned to method rather than emotion, using the rituals as reset points that restored clarity without requiring long recovery. Gradually, colleagues and family noticed a steadier Kenji, someone able to listen fully and act deliberately, not someone performing concentration but living it. This shift changed outcomes more than any sudden motivational surge ever could. Chapter 7. Ritual, identity, and small non-negotiables. Rituals become true power when they define who you are, not merely what you do. And the samurai understood identity is forged through repeated acts that leave a permanent trace on the soul. Kenji framed his morning as a non-negotiable, that testified to the life he intended, a life of attention, restraint, and clarity. He held the rule lightly in action, but firmly in identity. If asked, his answer was not "I try, but I do." Small, consistent acts accumulated to become the person he occupied. This is the quiet core of warrior wisdom. You are the sum of your small agreements with yourself, and by keeping them you become a presence that others recognize and rely upon. The result is not performance theater, but a stabilized center that guides how you speak, create, and respond throughout the day. In time, the ritual loses its novelty and becomes a compass, steady, invisible, and exact. Conclusion: the morning practice is neither mystic magic nor simple hygiene. It is the disciplined shaping of attention through small, intentional acts, grounded in ancient wisdom and adapted to present life. Kenji's story is proof that when silence is respected and rituals are kept with calm insistence, the mind that once scattered becomes a precise instrument, capable of sustained focus and clear action long after the morning ends. Like the samurai who polished his sword every day to keep its edge true, so too must one tend the practices that preserve attention. The sharpening is quiet, patient, and relentless in its modesty. Carry the practice as a private architecture for your day. Remove what distracts, choose one non-negotiable, and meet the morning before it meets you. In this way, presence becomes habit, and a single disciplined hour can alter the shape of everything that follows.